What's up guys, it's Andrew from Motorcycles Off-Road. In this Friday's video, I want to talk about the best dual sport for a new rider. I know a lot of people on the channel are a big fan of the Honda 300L, but should it be your first dual sport? Is there better options out there? Well, let's talk about it in this video. If you're a new rider yourself, or you know somebody that you want to get into dual sports just to ride with you or just one of your buddies, feel free to send them this video and we'll break down and talk about options to get them on the road, on the off-road, and we can all have fun together. I will say getting your first bike has to check a few boxes. One thing is it has to be simple and easy enough to ride, but you also don't want to lose fun factor over time. But generally with motorcycles, it's good to get your first year out of the way with something a little mild before you buy anything really crazy. We also want this motorcycle to be affordable. So a person that gets into the sport, or if you're new to the sport, you need money for a helmet, gloves, boots, gear, all that stuff can cost a bit, especially if you spring for some high-end stuff. I do think I should do a gear video pretty soon because a lot of people have been asking about what boots to buy or what helmet, so maybe I can make a video in the future and give some insight on my personal experiences. But all that aside, let's talk about the motorcycles in this video. So first, we'll go over my top 3 or so new, and then we'll cover some used options that if you're really on a budget, or if you just simply can't find a new one, which a lot of people are having problems with now as well. Now my number one may surprise you. The thing about my number one though, is I think it's probably the best dual sport you can start on, but I do not think it's the best value for dual sport. So I'll go further and to make that distinction. But my number one, the easiest dual sport I think you could possibly ride is the XT250. The XT250 is amazingly approachable for any type of rider. It's very good for short people, it's very good for beginners. The seat height on this bike is 31.9 inches and it has a ground clearance of 11.2, so it's a capable dual sport. Now in the power department, it only sports around 20 horsepower. That's a good and a bad thing. It also has fuel injection and you get a great 76 miles per gallon. This motorcycle has a very low MSRP of $51.99. So with the 20 horsepower, it's not going to blow your doors off, but it is a capable bike. And having such a low power range means that if you're not disciplined with your throttle hand, it's not going to throw you off into the weeds. Look, I've seen plenty of new riders do something that they shouldn't or they're not really capable of, and they throttle it off and they run into the thorn bushes. That's not great. You could hit a rock, a tree, all that stuff. No good for you and no good for the bike. But with this motorcycle, that will not be a problem. Now, full disclosure, I've never actually rode the XT250, but I was an owner of an XT225. And my 5'2" girlfriend found this to be the most approachable dual sport she could ride. And she was a beginner. Not saying anything bad about her, but if she can ride it, you guys can ride it. And we'll talk more about the XT225 when we get to the used area. So number 2. My number 2 is the Honda 300L or the Honda 300L Rally. Depending on which bike fits your needs, you can do some research for that. And I will have a video about that specific topic coming in 2 weeks' time. But the Honda 300L base model, for what you're paying, which is basically $50 more than the XT250, is a bargain. The seat height is a bit higher, and that may cause some shorter riders or new riders issues. Though for me, I feel like the 35-inch seat height, or 34.6 actually, is the sweet spot. You also get a slipper clutch, a 6-speed transmission, and it can be equipped with ABS, which is phenomenal for a new rider. And when you're off-road, you can simply turn the ABS off. And just so you know how these motorcycles work, is that turns your ABS off to the rear, so you still shouldn't overbrake and drop the front. Now back to the slipper clutch. Slipper clutch is amazing for a new rider. It allows you to be a little more aggressive with the clutch release and the downshifting without penalizing you as much as it would on another motorcycle. Many people find this bike very easy to ride, and I would say in fact, if you're my height or a little bit taller, the 300L might be the best motorcycle for you to start with. The big advantages of the previous XT were mainly the seat height, but that's not really a problem if you're over, let's say, 6'1". Alright, lastly, let's talk about a dark horse, a bike that gets no love, and that is the DR200. Now you're probably thinking, why the DR200? Aren't you a TW200 owner? That may be true, and the TW200 is a cool bike, but the DR200 is more of a dual sport. The TW200 is more of a farm bike, and I have some gripes gripes with it. But first, let's talk about the DR. The DR comes in at a 33-inch seat height, and it has a cheap MSRP of $46.49. The DR200 is low to the ground, and it comes in at 276 pounds wet, or 125 kilograms, making it the lightest bike on this list. Now, the problem with the TW200 is when you start to go off-road, the bike turns into a slippery sled, and that is with stock tires and road air pressure, of course. But okay, so you buy a new tire for the front. Immediately you have to do this for the TW200 because it's very slippery on the front. Almost everybody does this. They call it the death wing, the trail wing front tire, and we change it to something like the Shinko Golden Boy. Okay, no problem. The rear, on the other hand, you're stuck. There's little to no tires that fit this motorcycle. Some people are putting four-wheeler tires on there, but I wouldn't recommend that for the road. This is a dual sport after all, and when this tire is fully inflated, it throws you all over the place. With best results, I find airing it down to 15 psi, but if you look at it side by side to the DR200, you can see the TW200 is more of a tank, a workhorse, and the DR200 is closer to a dual sport. Now, it's your money, you can buy what you want, but I'm just saying, for riding both motorcycles, if it was a beginner, I would recommend the DR200. All right, let's talk about some used options. Firstly, would have to mention my beautiful XT225. I loved this motorcycle. I just had to get rid of it because there was other things I was buying, and a guy drove 12 hours to see this bike because I told him it was in pristine condition, which it was. He took it for one test drive and bought it immediately, paid asking price. He said where he was from in New Hampshire, he hasn't seen a small bike like this in such good condition. It's very similar to the XT250, little less power, no fuel injection, but if you can get one cheap, I'd say under $3,000, this is a good motorcycle. If you can get one for really clean, I would pay up to $35,000 to $4,000, depending on how well it was maintained. Next, we can talk about the CRF300L versus the KLX250. Now, me being a person who loves the CRF300L, I will tell you firsthand, I do not like the CRF250L over the KX250. So, to be clear, I like the CRF300L over the KLX300, which I have a whole video comparing those two, and I break down every reason why. But when it comes to the 250 class, I always like the KLX250 better. And yes, I've rode both bikes. My riding buddy Tim has the KLX250. My riding buddy Kyle has the CRF250L. You ride them side by side, I would have to say the KLX is a better value. So that being said, if you're looking for a KLX or a 250L, I would suggest going over to KLX because of its suspension and the features it offers, a little more power. The CRF is known for reliability, and it's a bit more mild and heavier than the 300L actually. Also, one side note, if you're considering the CRF250L versus the 300L, I also did a video on that, and I will say the 300L is definitely worth the wait and the investment, but I'll break down every single thing in that video. Okay, lastly, another dark horse that no one ever talks about, because I guess it's a 90s model, but this is the first dual sport I ever got my 5'2" girlfriend on, and that is a KLR 250. KLR 250 is a great motorcycle. It is a kickstart though, but it is a single cylinder thumper with a 6-speed transmission. So for that time, Kawasaki, hats off, because this was a great bike. Once again, this was a motorcycle I had to sell just to make room in my garage, as well as to buy other things like the TW200. But if you can find yourself a nice KLR 250 for a reasonable price, and I'm saying like $2,500, you should take that deal because this motorcycle is awesome. It is rocking a 855mm or 33.5-inch seat height, somewhere around the range of 25 horsepower, and its wet weight is only somewhere around 275 pounds. It's got good fuel capacity. Overall, this is a great bike for its time. And if you're on a budget, you could probably find one of these for $2,500, and it'll get you into the world of dual sporting. But that is my top 3 picks of new motorcycles, and my top 3 picks of used motorcycles for a new rider or a beginner or somebody that already knows how to ride but wants to take their sport off-road. I think these motorcycles are great, and I think you'll be happy with any of these. So if you know anybody that's new or you're trying to get somebody into this sport, send them this video. If you like my videos and you think I'm doing an alright job, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. I appreciate all the support. You guys have been awesome. Over 1 million views. It's crazy. In less than a year. Well, thanks guys. My name is Andrew, and this is Motorcycles Off-Road. Stay safe, guys.